Hello! Today we are going to get started on this scarf, and we are going to do it in Tunisian crochet, which is really fun, I think. I did a little Tunisian series, so if you've never done Tunisian and you can crochet, you should be able to do Tunisian. So I will link up those videos down below in the description box if you want to take a peek at those, and once you've mastered those basic stitches, you'll be able to make this without a problem. So today I'm going to be using two different hooks for this project. So I have a J hook to get started. So this is a 6mm. And then we also will be using an I hook and a 5.5mm. And if you noticed, we don't have Tunisian hooks. We're using just regular straight crochet hooks. So I think with this project it will be fine. Now if you're really worried about your stitches slipping off, you can either, use a regular Tunisian hook or just pop a little rubber band on the bottom of these guys and you'll have no problem. It'll be a little stopper and keep your stitches from falling off. So we are going to use the J hook first, and I actually have yarn that I think you could probably still buy. My mom gave me this yarn. It's Ice Yarns and it's a number 3, but you could definitely use a number 4 for this project. I just thought this yarn was pretty and I thought it would make a nice scarf. I love scarves. I'm all about scarves. I have so many scarves, but you can always use another one. Alright, so let's start with our slip knot. And we are going to chain 40 for this scarf. So I'm going to get started. Okay, so I have 40 chains and I just double checked to make sure, because you really want to start off with the correct amount of chains or it will just throw off your whole entire project. So now we need to pull up our loops. So I'm going to work in the back bump. So just going to turn that guy over and you can see the back bump. And make sure your first loop on your hook isn't too loosey-goosey. And so this is the second chain from our hook, but this will count as a stitch. So you will have a total of 40 loops. So we are going to pull up a loop. And we're just going to continue to pull up loops in the back bump until we have 40 stitches. And if you're familiar with Tunisian, you'll know that Tunisian has 2 steps. So this is step 1, or the forward pass, and then you will have the return pass. Okay, so I have completed my forward pass here, and as you can see I've got all 40 loops on there on this little hook. So it's doing okay. It's a little bunchy but not too bad, and I just prefer, if I can use a smaller hook, a shorter hook, then I will. And if you've watched the intro to Tunisian, as I said, the really long hooks, they actually really tend to hurt my hands a lot, so I try to use these guys if I can, or I'll use the ones with the cord on them. So anyway, let's get started on the return pass, and the return pass is going to be the same for the rest of the pattern. So you're going to yarn over, pull through 1 loop, and then you're going to yarn over and pull through 2 loops, and it will be like that for the entirety of this pattern. So I'm going to continue with my return pass, yarning over and pulling through my 2 loops. And if you're worried about when you're using a regular straight crochet hook, if that hump in the middle is going to affect the look of your project, it doesn't. I've made dozens of Tunisian projects with a hook like this and I've not noticed a difference, so okay, so we already have 1 row completed, and now for row 2 we're going to work purl stitch all the way across. That's just going to give it a nice little edge and also to help it lay more flat. So Just a little refresher, you have your yarn in front. I was already getting ahead of myself, and then insert your hook in the next loop. And then yarn over, and then pull through. Do the same thing, insert in that bar with your yarn in front. Yarn over, and pull through, and obviously leave your loop on your hook. And we're going to continue to do that all the way across. Okay, so I'm almost done row 2, and I need to complete my last stitch here, and the last stitch will be a Tunisian knit stitch, and all the stitches after that, your last stitch will always be a Tunisian knit. It just creates a nice neat edge. And now we're going to work off these stitches, so yarn over, pull through the 1, yarn over, pull through 2 for the rest of the row, and we will do this again for the rest of the pattern. So now we've already have 2 rows done. The first row is your setup row, and then this is the second row, and you can see those little pearls. Okay, so you can see row 2, you can turn it on its side and clearly see row 1, row 2, and then rows 3 and 4 are going to be purl stitches. So just go all the way across and work your Tunisian purl stitches for row 3 and 4. And again, your last stitch will be the knit stitch, and I will meet you back at the end of row 4. Alright, so I have completed row 4, and you can see again on its side, 1, 2, 3, 4. Now we're ready for row 5. So to start row 5, we are going to work 3 purl stitches. So your yarn's in the front, and here is our first stitch. So here's our first purl stitch, second purl stitch, and our third purl stitch. So now we're going to get into the stitch pattern, and there's going to be 2 different stitch patterns. So this is the first one that we'll do for a couple rows. So what you're going to need to do is you're going to insert your hook in the first bar and insert your hook into the second bar. So you have them on both bars. You're going to yarn over and work a regular Tunisian simple stitch just like that. So we actually did a decrease, but we don't want to decrease any stitches. So what we're going to need to do is do a yarn over to do an increase. So I have my yarn in front, we're going to yarn over purlwise. So my yarn's in the front, and we're going to do that. So if you're a knitter, that won't be too foreign to you, but if you're a crocheter, it might be a little weird, but you get used to it. Alright, so our next stitch is a purl stitch, and that's why we did a yarn over purlwise, because we are doing a purl stitch in the next one. So our next 2 stitches, we're going to do the same thing. So put your hook into the first bar, put your hook into the second bar, and work your Tunisian simple stitch. And now we're going to yarn over purlwise, and we're going to work a purl stitch in the next stitch, and work our, technically this is a Tunisian decrease, as we are inserting our hook in both bars and working 1 stitch. And now we're yarning over purlwise and working our purl stitch. And so we're going to keep doing this across. And once you get more rows with this stitch, you'll really see the stitch definition. It'll really pop out. Okay, so we are almost to the end of our row of row 5 for the forward pass. So we have 6 stitches to go. So we are going to do our Tunisian simple stitch in both of those stitches. You'll do your yarn over purlwise, and your these last 3 stitches are going to be purl stitches, and the very last stitch is going to be a knit stitch, just like we've been doing for the previous rows. So there's our 3 purls to match this side here, because I like symmetry. Kind of weird that way. I would struggle with abstract crochet projects, I think. Alright, so now we're going to do the return pass for row 5. Each row is 2 parts. So we pull through the 1, and then we'll just pull through the 2 to finish up row 5. And I will work 2 more rows of this stitch. We are going to work 26 rows, so you will have worked a total of 30 rows of this stitch, and I won't show all 26, working on the camera. That's going to get boring, and you're going to get the idea pretty quick of what you need to do. So I will work the rest of my 26 rows off camera to spare you. And there's going to be a lot of rows because we are making a scarf. So if you, get a little tired of it, I suggest, don't try to burn through it in 2 days. Just work a couple rows and then, take a break, maybe do something else, and then work a couple more rows. And eventually you are going to get to the end, I promise. You pace yourself. I do that with a lot of different things. I like this stitch, but it can, if you're doing the same thing all the time, it can get a little tedious. Okay, so now we are going to work row 6. So yarn in front, work first stitch is a purl stitch, yarn in front, second stitch, purl, third purl stitch. And now we are ready to start our stitch pattern. So you're going to insert, and it's real easy to see the bars now. Pop them in there. Work your Tunisian simple stitch, decrease. Now we're going to yarn over purlwise, so yarn in front and wrap her around, and then work a purl stitch in the next purl stitch. And then we'll do the same thing, put them in both of those bars, yarn over purlwise, work a purl stitch. And you're just going to continue that all the way across. And then your last 3 stitches are purl, and the very last stitch is the knit stitch. So I'm at almost the end of my forward pass of row 6. So my last 6 stitches. So I'm going to insert my hook in those 2, work my simple, do my yarn over purlwise, and then work my 3 purl stitches. And there's my last stitch to work the knit. And then we'll be ready to do the return pass. So yarn over through the 1, yarn over through 2, and just keep going. Okay, so we have completed row 6, and you can start to see the stitch pattern popping up a little bit. And I'm sorry, I don't know what this is called. It's something I came up with. I don't know if I invented it. I probably did not. I'm sure, I did not invent the wheel with this. Everything old is new again. I'm sure someone years ago came up with this and I just stumbled upon it. So we're going to work row 7 one more time so you can see this stitch pattern one more time, and then you're going to keep working until you have 30 rows total. So you're actually working 26 rows of this stitch here, but you will have 30 rows total. And then we'll get ready for the next stitch pattern. So we're working our 3 purl stitches right here, and insert your hook in both of those loops, yarn over, work your purlwise, yarn over, and work your purl stitch in the next. So it's not too hard, and you have to pay attention a little bit, but you don't have to put, you know, so much focus. Some projects are so intricate that you just really can't look away for a second. But this one, you know, you can relax a little bit while you're doing it. So we are almost to the end of row 7. So here's our last 6 stitches. So we put through those 2 bars there, work our simple, yarn over purl, last 3 are purl, and the very last is our knit stitch. And then you of course work your return pass. And just be careful when you're working your return pass. Sometimes if you go too fast, you know, you might accidentally pull through too many stitches. You don't want to make sure you're only pulling through 2, especially with the yarn overs. It could be, you could easily, you know, pull through 3 like that, which you don't want to do. So you don't have to go super slow, but just, you know, be mindful of that. Okay, so I've completed row 7, and so now you can really see the stitch pattern starting to emerge there, which is really cool. I just think it's a neat, it kind of reminds me of like a chain or a knit stitch variation of it in a way. So you will continue until you have work in the same stitch pattern until you have 30 rows. So I will meet you back when I am at 30 rows. Okay, so I've worked my 30 rows here. As you can see, the stitch pattern really shows up nicely now. And it looks pretty good with this yarn. I wasn't sure how it was going to look, but so far I'm liking it. So now we're going to get ready to do the next stitch pattern, and we are switching to our eye hook or 5.5 millimeter, and we're going to work our purl stitches like we've been doing. And the reason why we're switching to a smaller hook is because I kind of want this to flare out a little bit, just for a little bit of interest. Alright, so we are going to work 3 purl stitches, just like we've been doing. And then the next stitch pattern is going to be a variation of what we've been doing. Okay, so now we are at our first bar here after our purl stitches, and we are going to work a Tunisian simple stitch. And the next one, we are going to do the same thing as we've been doing, picking up the 2 bars. So here's the first one, here's the second one, and we'll work a Tunisian simple stitch. And we're going to yarn over purlwise. And then we're going to do what we've been doing. We're just kind of mixing it up a little bit, adding a little bit of interest. Okay, now we're going to pick up the next bar and the next bar and work our Tunisian simple and do our yarn over and do a purl stitch. And we're going to, now with this stitch, you can lose your bars a little bit. You can see as we pulled it up, it kind of pulled this guy down. So you want to make sure you don't miss it. Same with the pearls. Sometimes the little pearls can ride up a little bit and hide the bar, but they're there. So we're working our Tunisian simple, we're doing our yarn over purlwise, and we're working the purl. So I'm just going to keep doing this all the way across. Okay, so I'm almost across for round 31. So I am going to pick up my 2 bars here, do my yarn over. Now I'm going to yarn over purlwise, do a purl. Now we have this bar here. So for this bar here, so here's our purl stitches on our edges, and so we have this stitch here. We're just working a Tunisian simple. And then we work our 3 purl stitches, and then the last stitch will be your Tunisian knit stitch. And now we're going to work the knit, and then you will work your return pass like we've been doing. Okay, so we finished row 31, so it doesn't look like much right now, but we're going to work 32. Once you get going in it, then you'll be able to see it a little bit more. So we're working our purl stitch, and our second purl stitch, and our third purl stitch. And now we're to the middle section of our scarf, so we're going to work the original stitch pattern, this one here. So we'll insert in both bars, yarn over, and then here's our bar right here. It can get hidden, but it's there. So you'll work your purl stitch and do your yarn over, of course. So we're going to insert in the next 2 bars, yarn over purlwise, and then work the purl. And you will continue this stitch pattern all the way across. So I'm almost done row 32, so I need to yarn over purlwise, and then I'm going to work my last purl stitches and then my knit stitch for row 32. And then you work off your stitches like we've been doing. So for this middle section of the scarf, you're going to be alternating the 2 stitch patterns. So the one for row 31 and the one for row 32. So this is going to be a lot of rows going back and forth with this. So as I said before, just pace yourself. Don't try to, do it all in one day unless you're really having fun with it. But I know it can get a little tedious. So if you just do a couple rows a day, eventually, you are going to get there. I do that with some projects sometimes. So now we have finished row 32. So row 33, we're going to go back and do the one that we had done. I'll show it to you one more time. So working our purl stitches as we've been doing, and as you can see, this is laying nice and flat, so very minimal blocking will be needed. Alright, so we are going to work a Tunisian simple stitch right there. Now we are going to pull up a bar in this one, and in the next one do our Tunisian simple, which also creates a decrease. Now we need to do an increase where we're yarning over purlwise and working our purl stitch. And then we'll do that again. So this bar, that bar, yarn over purlwise, and then work the purl stitch. So when you're yarning over purlwise, the next stitch will be a purl. That's why we yarn over purlwise, so that you can get set up to do the purl. Because if you did a regular yarn over like this, you couldn't do the purl stitch, so you have to yarn over like that so that you're set up to do the purl stitch. In case you were wondering why you call it yarn over purlwise, and that's what I call it, so. So I'm almost to the end of this row for row 33. So I need to pull up in the next 2 bars like that. Work my Tunisian simple, yarn over purlwise, work my purl stitch, and then I have one more bar here in this sequence of stitches where we work a Tunisian simple. And then we work our last purl stitches and then our knit stitch. And then we work off our stitches on the return pass. As I said before, with Tunisian, there's always 2 parts to each row. You have the forward pass and the return pass. So let's work these guys off. Okay, so I've worked off those stitches for row 33. So row 34, you're going to do this original stitch that we did here. So you're just going to alternate back and forth of the original, and then so all the odd rows are going to be the Tunisian simple in your very first stitch. Then you're going to do the decrease and yarn over purlwise, and then in your last stitch in that row, you would work a regular Tunisian simple, and then your purls, and then your knit. And then all your even rows are going to be this original stitch. So you're just going to go back and forth, and I will let you know how many rows you will need to do approximately. Alright, so we are going to get ready to finish up our scarf here. So what I did is I had repeated rows 5 and 6 here until my scarf was about 70 inches long before I started on this section. I like really long scarves, so you don't have to make yours that long. And then keep in mind, this is the end part of the scarf because we want it to match the beginning. So here we go. Here's the beginning. So this part here is about 9 inches long, so just keep that in mind. Again, I like really long scarves. Like, I just love a long scarf. So mine might be a little bit longer than what someone else might like. And then, so once you have reached to your almost desired length, then you're going to go back and just work row 5. So you have, it looks like your chain all the way for 26 rows. So you're going to work row 5 for 26 rows, and then you're going to do your purl rows. Now when you do your purl rows, we did 4 rows to start off with, but you're actually going to do only 3 rows of purl because, let me show you the beginning part here. So if you're looking at the rows, you see your little purls here. So we actually have 1, 2, 3. I know it doesn't, the third one doesn't show up that well because of the yarn, but 1, 2, 3 rows of purls. And I worked 3 rows of purls here. So if we worked a 4th, we'd actually have 4 rows of purls. And I like symmetry, so I'm only going to work the 3. And then after I've worked my 3, now I'm going to finish this guy off. So I'm going to show you how to do that. So we are going to, because we did purl, we're going to finish off in purl. So I have my yarn in front. Oh, and again, when you're doing this part down here, you want to make sure you're using your J hook or 6mm. So I use the I for the middle and then the J for the ends because I want it to just flare out a little bit. That's just a style choice. You could actually just use a J for the whole thing if you'd wanted to, but let's finish this guy up. Alright, so I have my yarn in front, like I'm working a purl stitch, working in that bar, and then I'm just going to pull through. And just don't make your stitches too tightly, or too tightly, yeah, that doesn't sound right, too tight. You don't want to work too tightly. So you're going to insert your hook in the next bar, and work your purl, and you're just finishing off with a slip stitch actually. And you're just going to do that all the way across. Now of course when you get to your last stitch, you're going to work a knit stitch. So I'm going to continue finishing these guys off, and what you're going to want to do after you're done, you can cut your yarn. And then, of course, you want to weave in all of your ends. And if you need to block your scarf you know, certainly feel free to do that. So I'm going to continue finishing off here, and I hope you enjoyed this project, and I thank you so much for watching.